This is Pierre Vidalcode, working at Planet Technologies. Interviews is key in the process of a change management program. Knowing your context before acting um, leads to a better success. If you're adopting a one-size-fits-all strategy, you're probably going to miss the point. So I start every project, change management project, with a set of interviews. So first, before telling you how to uh, do these interviews, I wanted to talk about how do you choose the people you want to interview. So unfortunately, you have to create some buckets. We call them personas. So we try to identify a set of people, and the way I do it for digital transformation, digital workplace transformation, is to try to interview some knowledge workers, people who are basically in front of their computer all day, um, task workers, people who are using the computer from time to time just to achieve tasks, um, frontline worker or people who don't have access to computer but have access to a mobile device, either a smartphone or a tablet, because they're in front of a customer, for example. Um, there are also road warriors, people who are really mobile, meaning they're on the road or on the go all the time, inside the organization or outside. Um, there are also our VIPs who are really important to target in the digital transformation, because you're probably going to have to address them in a different way than the others. There are managers, maybe sometimes you want to address the management, especially you want to achieve a digital transformation and a cultural shift. There are exec assistant, because they're very key, they're very knowledgeable of the organization, they're very well connected, they can help their managers. So it can be interesting to target and interview those exec assistants. And then you have a lot of others personas depending on your organization. Or if you want to target a specific set of people who have a specific job and you think they are going to leverage the technology differently than others, then you can interview those people. And you try to, it's important to try to have a mix in with the people in interviews, a mix of generation, mix of diversity, a mix of um, naysayers and yesayers. So you have a better representation of your workforce. So how many interviews should you have? I would say at least 10. And between 10 and 20 is a good number. Maximum I did is 50 for a very large organization. But it's time consuming. So if you want to scale, there's another way to do it, is to do a survey. But with less questions, and usually it's more close questions, but it can give you an idea where can be the focus if you ask the good questions. So for example, ask. I use a very simple survey with two questions about the learning within the organization. So I ask the first question. I give a set of products and I ask how people are knowledgeable about those products. And it's more than knowledgeable. I ask them if it's critical or not for them. It's not exactly the same. And then I ask a second question is how they would like to learn those products, and I don't really ask that. I ask how much time will they spend to learn on those products. So then you have a match where people are really, it's critical for them and they feel comfortable, and they don't need to learn, or they need to learn, so that means they need extra. For example, a good example, Excel is, I did this survey, a global survey, and Excel was critical and Excel was needing some training. Um, Another example, Power Apps was not critical, but they were in need of learning because it's pretty new. So that way you can scale and identify with a few questions where you need to focus. But an interview is more deep. It gives you more storytelling, more use cases. It helps you to understand the context. It helps you to better understand the real um, value that you're going to potentially provide to the end users because you know them. And also, I can tell you that when I do the interviews, and if the IT person joins the interview, which is much easier when you're remote, because they can just come and listen, they learn a lot too. So they thought I have a lot of um, customers who told me we thought we knew our end users, and we discovered through these interviews, we discovered the um, the benefits and the potential benefits, and also we discovered some usage that were not in scope of this digital transformation. So that helped them also to connect with the business users. So the first set of questions I ask um, the the interviewee, um, and really the first one is beside they introduce themselves is uh, what are their main goals in their job, and the second and the following question is where are the main challenges, because I want to understand in generally if I identify a goal and a challenge, a pain that we can address through the change, then we can focus on that because we're going to solve a problem to someone. And when you solve a problem, people are more willing to change. So that's why I start with that and ask a few questions. Um, if before, yes, I forgot to say that starting the interview, I introduce the project to make them understand the global vision of the project so far, so they understand why we interview them, and ask them if they have some expectation regarding this project. Even if it's too early, they don't have to have expectations. But sometimes they heard about it and they already have expectations, especially early adopters. They really can be interested early in the process, and they might have some good idea to share. Then I have specific, really, bucket of questions, um, and I'm not going to give you all the questions, but I'm going to explain what the items are, because I think it's really useful to better understand the context, especially in the digital workplace transformation. The first one is about equipment, so I try to understand how they're equipped. So it's not just about PC, Mac, tablet, smartphones, also about headsets, um, and in general, uh, what kind of equipment. It means it can be what version of browser you're using. It can be you're using uh, VMware Citrix or remote access to their desktop environment. It can also be um, whatever technical piece of equipment they have. Sometimes they don't have a camera, sometimes they don't have a microphone. So I try to identify that, except if the IT team has that information already ready for me. The second question is around mobility. So I ask them if they're mobile in their work. And mobility is not just having a smartphone. Mobility can be with a laptop and the Wi-Fi. So I try to understand if people are mobile and how they're mobile. And because in digital transformation, it's really key to understand that information because they might have different instructions. Also add a new set of questions around working from home. Obviously, it's important now. So it's important to understand if people need to work from home, can work from home. Are there legal issues or problems or needs working from home? Do they feel that it will be useful for them? Do they feel they will be efficient? Even if it's not a promise, it's not asking a question that means they're gonna have the right to work from home, but at least it's good for everybody to understand the perception of the end users regarding their persona, their perception of working from home. I think it's important to have, at least it's valuable to have that kind of information. So ask those questions. Ask also questions around technology. So, um, I mean, technology, I mean, tech savviness. So, do people feel tech savvy in general at home or within their organization? To understand where they situate themselves, if they're really comfortable, and there's really a wide scope of answers here. Rarely very, very low, rarely very high, but it gives you an idea if they're coming from far or not. And if it gives you also an idea if there's a lot of differences. It's important to understand that because you cannot have the same approach with somebody who's really tech savvy and somebody who's not. Also ask a set of questions on existing technology, what they use every day and in general. So I'm asking them general question around that. So like in your technology environment, are you missing something or are you struggling with something obvious or um, will you have a dream about something that help them in their day-to-day work? And then I'm focusing on very specific set of questions around productivity, personal productivity environment. So mainly about office products, because it's really important to understand what they're using, especially when you do a digital workplace transformation, because they're spending a lot of time in office product. So if we can save them time, uh, or if they can have a better knowledge that help them save time or produce a better quality, that will be a gain too. So I try to understand where they're using, and there's one area where I can say that most of the end user don't really leverage the technology is OneNote. OneNote is a brilliant technology, very useful, potentially full of different use cases, and people don't know OneNote. Rarely they use OneNote with a good potential. So I'm trying to understand that context around personal productivity, because I spend time on that and spend time on searching. So I ask them question on search. How do they search? How long do they search? Are they happy with the search? Do they find information easily? What kind of information are they looking for? Document, pages, or people? It can be a lot of different search. Try to understand how they're leveraging search. I'm focusing a lot on collaboration, so I ask questions around collaboration. And by collaboration, I don't mean just, do you have a file share on a shared document on the file share or SharePoint? I try to understand what is the process of the collaboration. Okay, you have a document on SharePoint, then how do you communicate this document with your peers, and what are the pain points and stuff like that. So it helps you to understand where are the pain points, and because you're going to deploy a new collaborative environment, you can see where you can bring value, and you can also see the behaviors they need to change, especially so there's collaboration, it's one set of questions, and there is communication, which is another set of questions, which is really also transformative because people have ways to communicate, a lot of emails usually, but also and also it's cross collaboration communication. It's meetings. Meetings are made to communicate and are made to collaborate too. So I try to question around emails. If they have too many emails, why do they think they have too many emails? Are there any internal policies around emails, around meetings? Are there too many meetings? Are they efficient meetings? What are the suggestions to make meetings better? And questions like that, just to figure out where they're struggling with collaboration and communication, and where you can help. And a lot of time there's a tool aspect of the struggle, but also there's behaviors that has to be changed. So if you don't identify where the behaviors are coming from, sometimes they're coming from the tools, to be honest, but sometimes it's also coming from the culture. So you need to understand all of that, asking this question. And then I have question around the process. So what does it mean? I try to identify in their day-to-day work, do they have repetitive processes that takes time, that are time-consuming, that are complex or not complex, that are manual and they would like to be automated. So because maybe there's a quick win, potential quick win, but I don't spend much of time here unless I have a dedicated interview on that. Also, I have a small question around shadow IT, and I don't judge. I'm just saying. Often people are using shadow IT because they need a solution. They don't have it in house, so they try to find a solution. I try to be open on that, but also explain that maybe potentially the technology can help. Technology is going to be deployed that can help to address the shadow IT initial need. And it will be more controlled and safe. So I try to identify shadow IT, even if it's not easy to have this information. Again, depending on the culture of the organization. And I finish with two questions about the readiness and the awareness. So readiness, as I said earlier, I'll try to understand how people would like to learn about the change, even if we're not going to provide every methodology, but it's really important to see how people, depending on where they're working, what is their persona, what department they're working for. You can see that, for example, some customers I identified that they were relying on the help of others, especially their managers, and others were more doing training themselves, learning by themselves, either on Google something else, or experiencing by themselves the technology. So there are different set of learning. So I try to identify by persona how people like to learn, and also how people like to get informed. Because it will help for the learning. We help to build the right readiness plan, and for the communication, it will help to build the right communication plan. So try to understand not only uh, how they would like to be informed, but in what channel. So it's a matter of channel. It's a matter of sometimes the sender who send the information is important. For example, I have customers who are really zapping their emails, especially when they're coming from a central email address, global email address. They're they're more inclined to read an email coming from their manager or from a person which is really well identified. But on the other hand, the sometimes it's the IT, and the IT they don't like to send an email on their with their email account because they don't want to have all the questions in their inbox. So that kind of information is important because, for example, when you're deploying Teams, as an example, you can use then not email to ask question, but Teams. So people can ask a question in Teams, and several person can answer the question, and it's not in your inbox. It's not polluting your inbox. So understanding how people like to be informed is really key um, to build the right communication plan. So this is my framework. I'm not saying it's the best framework in the world for sure, but it helps me to have a structure where I have a set of questions, and for each persona, I can have a sort of map where I can say, for this persona, here where to focus, here are the findings, and having the same set of questions, even if in an interview you can follow the person somewhere else than your framework, because you find that the information you get is very valuable for the project, even if you didn't think about it before. But having this framework helps you to, for every persona, to have a set of, you know, findings, and if you have findings, you should have a solution to put in place. So that's how I lead interviews with end users, and it's always very interesting because selfishly, it helps me also to understand their work, and it's really interesting to interview different customers because they have different work, and every time it's a different interview. I've never been through the same interview, even if I have the same framework. It's never the same because people are so different. That's what is so interesting, and it's interesting selfishly for me. It's very interesting, and that's what I like doing change management. It's probably the part I like the most is to listen to people and to discover things. But also it helps the people who are with me during the interview. And when you're working from home, like I am now, you can do interview through a virtual meeting, so other people can join as soon as the interviewee agree and knows it. Um, you need to find the people who are not blocking the people to talk. Of course, you want to invite, for example, IT people that are open to listen and not blocking people to give their answer. You don't want to invite a manager and a managee to an interview at the same time, because then it's going to be hard to have every information you want. But when you invite, and when I invited IT people, it was very useful for them too, because not only they also see where the technology can help their end users, but also it helped them to understand how people are leveraging the technology, where they're struggling, and not only for the technology you're targeting, but in general, because I have open question and closed questions. So open question can open for new potential um, opportunities for the IT and the business. So I think interviews are really key. They're very insightful and they help you to launch in the right direction your change management program. Hope it was helpful.